Welcome to Group 39's analysis of the current South African market, including strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for our organization. Since we're determining whether or not to invest in this country, we felt a thorough PESTEL analysis would assist in our decision-making. South Africa is the southernmost country on the continent of Africa and is in the subtropical zone. It is the meeting place of the Atlantic and Indian Oceans and boasts more than 1,600 miles of coastline. The climate and topography of South Africa varies from the coasts inland to the Great Escarpment to the central plateau that covers the interior of the country. South Africa's beauty is not only in its land but also its wide and varied people. The varied cultures, languages, tribes, and religions contributed to its famous apartheid history, but since 1994 the cultures of South Africa have persevered and now work toward a brighter future for their nation. The population of South Africa as of mid-2016 estimates is 55.91 million, with 49% male and 51% female. South Africa is the only country in the world that has 3 capitals. Pretoria is the administrative capital and houses the executive branch of government. Pretoria is also the home of several universities as well as government research facilities. Bloemfontein, popularly known as the City of Roses, is the judicial capital of South Africa. Cape Town is the legislative capital and is the seat of the Parliament of South Africa. Cape Town has both a rich and challenged history that has allowed it to become one of the most multicultural cities in the world.
Similar to the United States, South Africa has been a parliamentary representative democratic republic with free elections since April 1994. Nelson Mandela was South Africa's first post-apartheid president. South Africa has 3 levels of government: national, provincial, and local. National government is divided into 3 branches: executive, legislative, and judicial. When contemplating the intricacies of doing business in South Africa, a company should note that there are 13 political parties that all get a seat at the table. The president is chosen by the largest party. South Africa has come a long way from apartheid. However, Transparency International continues to give them a rank of 64 out of 176, compared to the United States at 18. Their corruption score consistently hovers around 44. Emphasizing the problem of corruption is the consistently low rule of law score, political stability score, and complete lack of control of corruption. All are significantly less than the United States. Political instability is high, leading to accusations of corruption and lack of faith in the government. President Jacob Zuma is in the middle of his second term. Both President Zuma and his cabinet members are surrounded by controversy and calls for his removal from office. Corruption is a problem. The second level of government is provincial. South Africa has 9 provinces, and like states in the United States, each has its own legislature and is represented at the national level. The third and final level of government is local. There are 278 municipalities that function very similar to counties in the United States or England.
South Africa has made many changes to its economic system over the past 2 decades. In the 80s to mid-90s, the economy was based more on a command system. As the political climate has changed, it is currently a mixed economy, but there are still some major industries controlled by the government, like oil. Currently, there has been a major push to privatize all industries. South Africa is one of the largest and strongest economies in Africa today. Economic growth, measured by annual GDP, has shown very little progress over the past 2 to 3 years. In the early 2000s, South Africa was seeing large growth in the area of 5% in 2005, but took a huge drop during the economic crisis of 2008. There was a rebound, but still growth is slow at only 1.26% in 2005. GDP total of South Africa is only $314 billion versus the U.S. at $18 trillion. As the graph of the GNI per capita PPP shows, there has been steady disparity between South Africa and U.S. over the past 25 years. The data shows that South Africa has become more expensive compared to the U.S. The PPP factor is around 5.5 in 2015. The Human Developmental Index is an important criteria for economic development. A score of 1 shows high economic development. South Africa, however, has a score of 0.66 versus the U.S. that has a score of 0.915. There are many factors that make up the score. As we can see from the table, South Africa falls short compared to the U.S. on many aspects, like life expectancy of over a 20-year difference. One of the reasons for the low life expectancy is the high homicide and crime rate. One of the negative signs of economic growth for South Africa is the high unemployment rate of over 25.1%. How has this affected foreign investment into South Africa, as well as investment out of the country? If we look at net outflow of FDI, we see that over the past 4 to 5 years, there has been a significant movement of money and investment out of South Africa. It appears similar to outflow in the United States. Many companies are looking outside of South Africa to invest. Net inflow of FDI into South Africa has significantly slowed in the past 2 years. There was nice investment into the country from 2007 to 2013, but that has seen a sharp decrease in 2015. The video that I'm showing next will show you the economic outlook going forward for South Africa.
South Africa recently avoided a downgrade to so-called junk status by the ratings agency Standard & Poor's, which cited its slow economic growth as a major area of concern. Most feel the economy has bottomed out, but the recovery will be slow.
Business confidence surveys are telling us that the majority of survey respondents, in other words, firms in South Africa, are not confident. And when you drill down into what their main bugbears are, the biggest constraint to business, we are told, is the untidiness of our domestic political arrangements.
Next, we'll take a look at the social culture dimension of South Africa. South Africa is comprised of many languages and dialects. Its primary language is Afrikaans, derived from Dutch Protestant settlers in the 18th century. It is followed by Xhosa at 16% and English, fluently spoken by 10% of the population. South Africa has many other minor languages spoken based on location and community. Although religious beliefs vary widely, officials of South Africa have actively encouraged Christian beliefs. Protestants lead the way at 37%, followed by Catholicism and other Christian sectors. Islam is also a predominant religion in South Africa, and believers are primarily located in cities of Cape Town, Durban, and Johannesburg. Next, we'll take a look at Hofstede's cultural dimensions of South Africa. Looking at the Hofstede Index comparison between South Africa and the United States, we are able to see a close similarity in many categories, such as masculinity, uncertainty and avoidance, and indulgence. Although both countries have scored relatively low in the pragmatism or long-term versus short-term orientation dimension, we can see that South Africa, a country holding to tradition, is more open to changes in the environment in preparation for the future compared to the USA. South Africa is comprised of many different religions and ethnicities, which is reflected in its individualism score of 65. This suggests that its social framework is more loosely knit, and individuals are more concerned about their own surroundings. However, South Africa does score less than the USA at 91, showing that some collective thought continues to exist in the country. South Africa's power distance score of 49 suggests that hierarchical order continues to exist in its society, and subordinates are expected to do as they are told by their respective superiors. South Africa's life expectancy falls at 57.4, a relatively low score compared to the world's average of 71 years. USA's life expectancy falls at 79.1, exceeding the average. Although education levels in South Africa do not match up to those of the United States, there has been steady growth. The average years of schooling is 13.6 years, and the adult literacy rate stands at 93.7%. Nonetheless, the high school dropout rate continues to exist at 23% due to poverty and lack of support. South Africa uses a significant percentage of its GDP on education. However, sufficient resources are still lacking as teachers are taking on an average of 28 students per class.
Let's take a look at technological development. The World Innovation Index was utilized to assess the innovation and growth in South Africa's economy. While South Africa is ranked 54th overall, it is a leader in sub-Saharan Africa with the second seed. There are many innovations that have already come out of Africa, including the world's first heart transplant in 1967, the patented Smart Lock safety syringe that has likely saved millions of lives from accidental needle sticks, the Delos that breaks up coastal wave action, and finally, the Creepy Crawly that was the world's first pool vacuum. In 2012 to 2013, South Africa spent 0.76% of its GDP on research and development. That investment was split between 5 R&D performing sectors. Higher education received the largest increase in R&D expenditure, a 5.9% bump this last reporting period. In 2008, South Africa launched their 10-year innovation plan that will span until 2018, demonstrating their commitment to keeping South Africa a competitive nation. Patents over time is another measure we analyzed. We found that while the number of patents in South Africa by both residents and non-residents is increasing, it is nowhere near the level of the United States. We will now turn our attention to the environment. Yale's Environmental Performance Index was utilized to assess the current situation of ecosystem vitality and environmental health in South Africa compared to the United States. Out of 180 countries, South Africa ranks 81st. The overall score demonstrates that there is some challenges still with environmental protection and maintenance. However, their trend for the past 15 years has been continual improvement, which mirrors the trend line of the United States. Environmental health specifically has improved dramatically in comparison with the United States from 2014 to 2016. While there are struggles with water and sanitation and health impacts, air quality is on par with the United States. This is driven by the lower proportion of the population whose exposure and risk exposure is above World Health Organization thresholds for South Africa than in the United States. The biggest area of concern for South Africa is access to sanitation and water. Both scores are significantly below the United States, and health concerns that are due to limited water and sanitation access. Now let's move to ecosystem vitality. South Africa is rich and abundant in natural resources, flora, and fauna. It is clear that South Africa preserves and protects its marine life and fish stocks with greater care than the United States, even though the U.S. has over 7 times more miles of coastline. South Africa has more protection for national species of birds, mammals, amphibians than the U.S. as well, but where South Africa really falls short is climate and energy. In both carbon intensity and CO2 emissions, the United States scores significantly higher, leading this to be a future challenge for South Africa.
Now we will discuss the legal system of South Africa. South Africa has an independent judiciary subject only to the Constitution and the law. The Constitution is the supreme law of the country and binds all legislative, executive, and judicial levels of government. The Constitution provides for several courts, including Constitutional Court, Supreme Court of Appeals, High Courts, Magistrates' Courts, and any other recognized court such as a labor court, military courts, and different tribal courts. South Africa has a mixed legal system combining elements of civil law and common law. This mixed legal system originated in Europe and Great Britain. In comparison, the United States has a common law system in which the judges can interpret the law and set new precedents. Some fun facts about the two countries: South Africa legalized same-sex marriage almost 10 years before the U.S. Due to globalization and technology, citizens of both countries were able to follow recent high-profile cases in real time. O.J. Simpson and Oscar Pistorius are examples of legal cases that captured the world's attention. If you are interested in doing business in South Africa, it is important to understand property rights. Countries that have weak property rights tend to struggle to develop strong economic markets. South Africa has been a member of the World Intellectual Property Organization since 1975 and is among over 180 nations that have signed international treaties designed to protect intellectual property. Although the U.S. is ranked first worldwide, South Africa remains the first ranked among those countries in the African region in terms of protecting intellectual property and is ranked 20th overall. It is imperative to review the SWOT analysis to assess what makes this country unique. Strengths include the fact that the country is a democratic nation, has made efforts at increasing women in government roles, and has free trade agreements with other African nations. Weaknesses include the apartheid history, as well as high unemployment and crime rates. Opportunities include a prime coastal location with large port cities and an active tourism sector. Lack of strong property rights protection remains an important threat. We hope that the information presented will assist you in your decision-making process regarding conducting business in South Africa.